everybody. Today I want to talk about the fertilizers I use to take care of annuals and perennials in landscape beds. I don't use these much in vegetable gardens, but I do use them in all my annuals and all my perennials that we take care of here at Garden Up. This is Alaska brand Morbloom and Fish Fertilizer. Morbloom is a 0-10-10, so no nitrogen, but lots of phosphorus and potassium, which is very good for blooms. And then Fish Fertilizer, this is Fish Emulsion, and oh boy does it smell great! So my caution with this one is if you have a dog that will likely dig up your plants to find out what that fabulous smell is, don't use this where the dog can get to it. So anyway, what you'll need to use these is simply the fertilizers themselves, a tablespoon measuring cup, and a watering can. Always read the labels to know how much fertilizer or any chemical to use on anything. And these ones, so Morbloom, the label's on the back, shake well, application frequency, every 3 weeks. We do it every 2 weeks because that's how often we visit flower beds. Annuals and bedding plants. So, and that has some examples. Pretty much your pots and any annuals that are in your flower beds. Mix 1 tablespoon per gallon of water for every 25 square feet of soil. Okay, so for annuals, this is a 2-gallon or 8-liter watering can, and I mix 2 tablespoons in this watering can and fill it up with water because it's 1 tablespoon per gallon and this is 2 gallons. So I'll take 2 tablespoons of Morbloom and mix it in that watering can. For annuals. For perennials, mix 2 tablespoons per gallon. So if I'm fertilizing my salvia or my lavender or my Shasta daisies or anything like that, it's 2 tablespoons per gallon, which means 4 tablespoons in that watering can. The other thing I fertilize a lot is roses. This is also 2 tablespoons per gallon. So again, 4 tablespoons for a 2-gallon watering can. Now, for fish, I use fish fertilizer on any plant that is sick, it's not doing well, especially if it's got yellowing leaves like interveinal chlorosis or anything like that. If it looks like it needs more nitrogen, I'll give it some fish. Because fish is a 5-1-1, it's not a huge dose of nitrogen, but it's plenty for plants. This is good, healthy nitrogen. It's not like a lot of fertilizers are like candy. They give the plant a shot of energy, just like a kid. If you give a kid a whole bunch of candy, it'll give them a shot of energy. They'll be running up the walls and then they'll crash. Well, plants do the same thing. If you give them a chemical fertilizer that doesn't have a natural base to it, it will be like giving them a bunch of candy. They'll go crazy for a week or two and then they will crash because they'll get addicted to that fertilizer and they won't be able to be healthy without it. It's a real general analogy, but you get the idea. So I like to pick nice fertilizers that are long-lasting and helpful for the plant over time. They build the plant's health as well as give it a little boost in the short term. So with fish fertilizer, you can use this on vegetables, bedding plants, etc. and annuals, but I don't usually do it unless they need it. So again, if they're sick or have some chlorosis or yellowing of the leaves. What I use this on mostly is roses. So roses, 3 tablespoons per gallon for 25 square feet of soil. Okay, so 3 tablespoons per gallon, meaning 6 tablespoons per watering can. And what I do for roses is I put both fertilizers in at the same time. So 4 tablespoons of Morbloom, 6 tablespoons of fish in a 2-gallon watering can. And this is good for about 4 to 6 roses depending on how big they are. So I call that a cocktail. It's easy to measure it and record it and whatnot, and because you'll want to keep records of when you fertilize your garden. So I'm going to show you how to do it now. I'm going to first do Morbloom, and I'm going to do it on all my annuals and all of my bloomers. So on my blooming perennials, which right now I have peonies blooming. The lupins are about done, so they don't really need it anymore. And I have my Shasta daisies over there just getting started. So I'm going to fertilize the annuals and I'm going to fertilize the Shasta daisies right now. Then I'm also going to put cocktail on all of my roses, and I'm going to show you how I do all of these mixes. So without further ado, annuals first. Annuals are 1 tablespoon per gallon. So a 2-gallon pot gets 2 tablespoons. So this is a really nifty little shot glass that I got at Northwest Seed and Pet where I bought these. But after a few years, it did wear off. So anyway, tablespoons right about here. So shake well first. 2 tablespoons in the watering can. And I always put the cap back on between uses, just because if not, inevitably it'll tip over and you'll have a big mess. The next thing I want to talk briefly about is the parts of the watering can. So obviously handle, tank, etc., spout, but the rose, this thing on the end, this is really important when you're fertilizing because it disperses the fertilizers and you can coat the leaves. And a lot of fertilizers are absorbed dermally through the leaves and they help the plants faster. If you take your rose off, which most watering cans do allow you to do this one just screws on and off. You can just put the fertilizer right into the pot, which is fine. Some fertilizers this is better. This one in particular, I like to get it all over the leaves. And I like to get it all over the leaves so that it helps the plant right away. Because dermal absorption is much faster than having to wait for it to percolate down into the soil and then absorb up through the roots and then get through the vascular system of the plant to where it makes a difference. So this 2 gallons should be plenty to do all 4 of my pots this size and pretty much my window boxes too. So I'm getting it all over the leaves. Now if you have a plant that has pubescent leaves that shouldn't be getting wet on the leaves, such as if you're using this on an indoor African violet or something like that, then you don't want to do this. Take the rose off and bottom water or get it right into the soil, but don't put it right on the leaves. But most of your outdoor plants shouldn't be pubescent because they'll brown up and die anyway, so that's not a concern on outdoor plants. Deadhead this real quick. I usually fertilize after deadheading, just because I don't like sticking my hands down in a wet pot. Again, all over the leaves. And this is another good way to know how much to use too, because my rule of thumb, once all the leaves are wet, they've had enough fertilizer. And it's the same with roses and all of the other things that we do this too. We're going to do the window boxes next. Now with window boxes and hanging planters, you're replacing with the fertilizer the water that it would have received that day. So just like if you were watering regularly, you want to water it until it drips from the bottom. That way the whole pot, all of the soil is saturated with water and you know your plants are getting a good drink. And that way they get the right amount of fertilizer that day. So that was perfect. 1 2-gallon watering can did all 4 of my pots and all of my window boxes. So now I'm going to mix a Morbloom for perennials. And remember, perennials are 2 tablespoons per gallon. So I'm going to use 4 tablespoons in the 2-gallon watering can. So here we have my Shasta Daisy, which is just starting to bud out. I do want to say one more thing real quick. The best time to put bloom boosting fertilizer on a plant is when the blooms are just starting to set. So on something like this, where they are blooming, now is the time. But on something like a rhododendron, where it blooms first thing in the spring, but it actually sets bud in the fall, we put the bloom boosting fertilizer on it in the fall when those buds are first starting to set. Right now, no fertilizer needed, not unless there is some chlorosis of the leaves or something like that, then I'll put some fish on it. But other than that, I do not fertilize rhodies except for in the fall, and I put the acid on them in the spring because they really like acidic soil. So, on my Shasta daisies, I'm going to water until all of the leaves have a good healthy coat of fertilizer, and then right around the drip line, and then that one's done. The salvia is something else that's setting bud right now, so I'm going to water it as well. Again, all the leaves nice and wet. Another daisy, same thing. Okay, what else is blooming right now? Lupins, peonies are done. There's another salvia over here. Let's go do the other salvia. There's a daisy. My liatris. Why not? And a little bit right here on this salvia. Now I've run out of this watering can of perennial Morbloom mix, and so I'll do the rest later, but for now I'm going to show you how to fertilize roses. Cocktail for roses. 2 tablespoons per gallon of Morbloom, so 4 per watering can. And when I mix a cocktail, personally, I always do the Morbloom first, mix up our fish, and then I need 6 tablespoons of fish. I might actually need to go get another gallon because this one's almost empty. So 3, look at that, yum yum. Nice brown, ooh, smells fabulous. And that's empty, we need to go get another jug. So the next thing I'm gonna do, now that I've got my fish and my Morbloom in the watering can, is I'm gonna rinse this out while I'm filling the can. Otherwise, this fish fertilizer sits in here, it builds up, it gets gross and ooky, and you can't see your measurements inside, and it's all kinds of reasons why you want to wash this out. My assistant Lily wants to try to fertilize things. This is my favorite rose. It's called Neptune. Beautiful lavender purple blossoms, and it smells phenomenal. So I'm going to make sure that all the leaves are well coated with cocktail. And by the time all the leaves are wet is about the time that the rose has had enough fertilizer. So now I'm going to move to the next rose. Here's my next rose. Just like that. And that's about the right amount. It's a good rule of thumb. Once all the leaves are wet and you've gotten the drip line, that's enough fertilizer for this plant. And that way you'll never overdo or underdo any of your plants, no matter how big or small they are. All right, let's go to another one. This is ladybug larva. So I'm gonna make sure not to get that little ladybug larva because I don't want it to get wet. We have had aphids like crazy all over the place this year. And that rose is now done. So that's all there is to fertilizing. That's at least all we do for the blooming fertilizers. There are other fertilizers we use for other purposes, and I will be doing other videos on those, so make sure to follow the channel, like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. And the fertilizing classes will probably be in the Spring Garden Chores playlist. That's it for today. See you in the garden.